Do you think it's important that game jams, like organized ones, have prizes and rankings and competition, or do you think people should just be all fluffy and go with the flow and like everyone's a winner? What do you think?
You see, I prefer a bit of competition. I prefer a bit of competition. I like having the stakes, but it is upsetting when you don't win. And you know, when you're gonna have prize pools, there's only gonna be one winner, and possibly like between 10 to 3,000. How many people are doing GMTK? I think like
A lot, like
well, it's closing into 100K. I think. Um, you know, and especially for something like that, it's fun to have some kind of prize. I think it does take up it does like bring a bit of competitiveness, and it brings a bit of like um it gets the spirits going, but at the same time, like a game jam, like it's difficult to decide, but I think I prefer game jams have a prize pool, or no, not like or a prize, or like some kind of incentive to do well. But at the same time, I think it's important to have those very chill ones. Like, and our global game jam used to have a prize and ranking system, but people got very upset. And especially global game jam is a very big one, so
mm,
it especially for a very community based like game jam, you want the community having a higher spirits than rather what you sort of intend, right? And what do you think?
I mean, I was going to ask Blake because I feel like Blake's done more of like the solo jamming in a group. You haven't done many like organized ones, have you?
No, I've done. I did the very first Brackies game jam back in like 2019 by myself. I've done two. No, then I've done one Haunted PS1 game jam, which was like 5 weeks long, and I also did the Mr. Craven game jam, which I think I got third place, and I got a $50 Amazon gift card for that. So I've done some free ones. I've got an Amazon gift card for one.
Do you think it's worth having prizes and there should be more competition in game jams?
I mean, I think it really just depends on what the vibe of the game jam is. I'm sure you're probably going to get a lot more people and maybe more effort put in when there is a money prize. But I guess it really just depends on what the game jam is going for.
Because personally, I think, like you said, like sure you can have more like chilled game jams, and maybe if you're doing like some with friends, but even then, like for example, going kind of more towards LAN parties. When we had LAN parties, I think the best LAN party I ever had was actually a competition where we had a bunch of young people who obviously played younger games, and this was before Fortnite and Roblox, any of that. So like the games we were playing were like Call of Duty and Gary's Mod and that sort of stuff. And the older people who were like in their 30s, reaching 40s, we basically split them down the middle of like the oldies and the youngies. And what we would do is have two teams and a giant wheel of different games from like, everyone's specialty. So like through the night there were rankings of like who could beat each other at Street Fighter, or like you'd have like team-based ones where you'll play Dota together. And you'd put in like $10, $20 together, and when there's like quite a few of you, you can get some good stuff. And I remember one of them, like people all won Razer mouse mats for one. Other ones, the other team promised to share the other team KFC after the LAN party. And I think, like, I understand what people say when they say, oh, competition, you shouldn't have prizes. But I just think it's also like a fun thing to do. And especially when you compete well, I feel like I don't know. As humans, I think a lot of our systems are reward based, even in terms of like how our bodies work. It's like we have dopamine, we reward ourselves for certain efforts. And I just think game jams, and especially whenever I organize or want to attend them, I don't care so much if I win or lose. I think it's awesome when people do win, and having that prize, like Andrew was saying, like it's something cool to kind of work towards and does push you. Because like for me, I've been in certain game jams, and after like the second day, and I'm all drowsy and not knowing why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? At least knowing that clear prize of like, well, maybe you could win like $100 or a $50 Amazon card. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna keep working through that to win. So, and I also think having like ranks and being able to award people based on things like gameplay, the art, the music, all that sort of stuff. I think it rewards those who've worked hard, but it also gives those maybe who weren't working as well to see where they can work towards to improve. I think it also helps greatly with improvement. Like, even though it might break some people's hearts to be like, oh, I worked so hard in this game and didn't get anything, um, it also, I think, helps people see, okay, that other game won. Why did they win? And I reckon it also helps. Maybe Andrew, you can talk this as well with like group dynamics. Maybe people who lose end up realizing that the communications poor with their team and the other team that won was really good, or they had a certain idea, or they listened to different people. Um, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting topic to bring up because a lot of game jams I know aren't focused around prizes and people don't really want to do ranking. And sure, when there's, I think for the bigger ones like GMTK, probably don't want to do it as much or as seriously because there are so many games you have to go through and rank. But I think if it's like a closed game jam, like in a physical space, definitely have prizes, definitely have rankings, definitely have judges. Because yeah, competition's fun.
I think look the idea of prizes and even if it's not prizes, the ranking in general, um, it just drives a lot of spirit and it forces people to give some kind of effort. And it's an overall spirit sort of. I said a spirit lifter, but there's a bit of that competitive drive that makes
Mm.
people, it excites people. It gives people like an almost like a dopamine rush. Even when you start, the idea of, hey, we might make it up there. It's like it's a very satisfying feeling. And I know GMTK doesn't give out prizes; they have rankings, and you rank high, and not everyone in the top 50 makes it into the video, but I know that like a lot of them do, and that's in itself a very good prize. And like it gives sort of an incentive towards those who are a bit more like amateur devs, sort of indies. It gives us sort of incentives to sort of like work towards something, but also when you have rankings, you can get some people who are like the top of their field and they're like, hey, you know what? Let's just like wipe the park out of all these like kiddies. They're basically just smurfing. And it's like it's a lot of it's like a lot of there's a lot of little things that you need to be careful with when you introduce rankings and prizes and stuff. But I think in general, I like it because it's just like it gets that sort of it gets a jam flowing and makes it feel like a big event almost, right?
I think the hardest I ever worked on a game jam was for the Mr. Craven game jam, who's a YouTuber, and at the time I don't know how many subscribers he had. It would have been, I don't know, over 100,000, I believe. And I knew that like whatever I made was going to be played by him on his channel, and like 20 to 100,000 people are going to watch it most likely. So having that as like an incentive like really pushed me to go really hard on that project.
It's definitely a good incentive, I think. Like getting on a video. I think I got on Donkey's video. I got on Pirate Software's stream. I did not make GMTK last year, but and the incentive. There's also Global Game Jam where there is no ranking, unfortunately, and I believe that in the past there was some kind of dispute with that. But there's still that dopamine of like, or that like reward and satisfaction of the play party where everyone brings
Mm.
their games in and you get to see people react and play to your game. Uh, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really give an incentive to give it your all during the game jam, right? And for a lot of these games, like GMTK, I think a part of it is looking at other people's games, looking at how they did, and looking at like and then the whole ranking process is the whole community thing itself. You get to meet so many people, you talk to them. I just get on, I hop on Discords and I just like stream me playing people's games, and then people will be like, "Oh, I want you to play my game," and then we'll exchange games and give each other ratings, give each other feedback. It's very fun. In general, I think like a ranking process is just incredibly fun and gives an incentive to play all the games.
Interesting. Actually, a pitching idea to you guys. Should we organize a game jam?
Should we organize a game jam?
Yeah.
I don't know how I would go about it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it would be very fun.
How much work's involved in running a game jam?
I think it's more at the end when you got to play them or review them. I mean, I've been tossing up, and I've had people reach out to me and be like, "Oh, Nathan, for my other channel, go make a game jam." I think that's why I asked the question of like, do you think prizes should be a thing on game jams? Because I'm like, I honestly want to give people prizes, and there's that, and I also want an interesting theme or challenge. So for like my personal channel, I thought of doing one where it's like you have to use Unreal Engine. So people who haven't used Unreal before can have a chance to actually use the tool and figure out how to like make stuff in it. But I reckon like for the playtest panel, it'd be really fun to have one that's like specifically like mechanic focused, or like it has to be a trio or something. Like you got a team of 3, and like whatever you make, you have to make. I think would be really fun. Just having those restrictions, I think, would be really interesting to kind of see how people react and figure out ways around challenges like that, because I think that would be really cool. And obviously, we can all play it at the end, and maybe even do like a big live stream on this channel here about it. I think would be really fun.
Do you think if the like main prize was that the winner gets to be interviewed on the podcast, we would have nobody actually enter because no one would actually want to be that.
What is this channel with 6 subscribers? Like, I don't want to be interviewed by them. Cringe. No, I would have the prize be something either like pretty big, like new, not GPU, but like RAM or new hard drive, or something that can actually help people. I think because a lot of people I know I talk to who struggle making games, it's always like, oh, my SSD's like too small, or I need more RAM, or just little things like that. Or even like for other prizes, like I'd love to gift things like Substance Painter or just software tools that usually people can't shell out money for. Had that be like a prize. Like with Unreal, I was going to go find some Unreal assets that people could actually use if they want as well. Like it's funny with prize money, especially if you do like an online one, it's very hard to figure that out. I know some people have done ones where it's like it's a pizza jam, so whoever wins, the organizer buys a pizza for you. But internationally, they just PayPal you like however much a pizza costs in like your country for you to order a pizza. So it'd be fun to even do stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, we can have like smaller game jams, so it's just like $10, $20. It's just like a McHappy Meal or something. We buy you like a ramen game jam where we'll pay for your ramen meal or whatever. Yeah, so yeah, I think you're 100% right, Blake, in that if that was the main prize of being interviewed right now, no one would really care. We'd have to have some monetary or, physical incentive, I think.
I think restrictions help a lot, especially the restrictions almost breed creativity. I know so many games that are game jam game first. Just off the top of my head, I know Don't Starve was originally a game jam project. Titan Souls. I know Team Cherry came from a game jam. They met up for one of the foreign in-person ones. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a very good idea for people to get a start, especially for indies.
What's funny, I know even is it Grow Home? That was a Ubisoft game, but that also came out of like they basically did local game jams at Ubisoft to like have a professional work day where you like improve your skills, and they made a game jam, and they're like, oh, actually, let's make this into a commercial product, because like even the fact that like AAA can also do that, and I even know Double Fine, they always each year do like a game jam as well at the company, and a lot of those major games end up either becoming full mechanics. Like I know there was a game jam in the Psychodyssey documentary. They did a game jam where it was like you were throwing all these like ingredients into a giant pot and stuff, and that ended up being put in the actual Psychonauts 2 game because they like the mechanics so much, they just put it into the full game. Where other games that they've made, smaller ones, have just been game jam games that they've decided to work on for 6 months or a year to release. So like, I think you're right in saying that like game jams with restrictions brew creativity, but it's like a really big catalyst to making really successful games. There are a lot of games that are just game jams. Games like that's crazy.
Yeah, or like last week we talked about Angerfoot, and that came out of a game jam as well.
Yeah.
And there's so many examples of this, and or even Andrew, Sus Jam's game on Steam. That was when I first met Andrew. That was a game jam project, and yeah, now it's a full Steam release.
Yeah, it's really cool when these big companies do game jams. One of the cool ones I know. As much as people don't like them, but Riot does these jams every year. Where not they don't like, it's not a game jam, but it is I think it's like a Riot jam or something, and everyone prepares for this like event. Some people like mix cocktails for the jam, and some people like make arcade machines. Some people make like cool systems that could go into the game later. It's very cool. They do a video on it every year, but yeah, I wish I could go to one of these like big company game jams because they sound really cool.
And you have like crazy specialists too who know their stuff. So like you're saying before, how like some of them are smurfing at like the Global Game Jam, like going to all these like closed business ones would be insane. Having like some network guy who just knows how packets work and can make this incredible game jam thing where it's like, oh yeah, we'll just like interface with the computers through like whatever. Or, have some incredible artists who can just, I mean, me and Blake have both seen New Rig, Andrew, and it's another level of like watching you and Maya do stuff. It's like this guy knows what he's doing. He knows his way around the
It's
gray
beautiful.
interface. So it'd be crazy to see, people who've been working in the industry, whether they're programmers or artists or whatever, for 10, 15 years, work on game jam games where it's like, okay, you have 3 days to work on something. That's the more traditional way of like game jams. I know some are longer and whatever, but like I would just love to see, yeah, what they could come up with their skills. I think that'd be really cool as well.
You guys prefer the longer like 2 week game jams, or you guys prefer like the like short couple of days, 2 to 3 days game
I
jams?
prefer the longer ones because I feel like in like a weekend, I'm just gonna make a game that's like not that good. Like I know plenty of amazing games that have come out of a 3 day game jam, but for me, I sort of steer away from them and pick the longer ones. Like one of my games, Bowers of the Ocean, was made in like that was a game jam, but it was made over 5 weeks, and I think that game jam was even extended longer than that as well. But I just don't feel like me personally, I could make something that I was proud of in 2 or 3 days.
You're not proud of Eggmon?
Well, Eggmon was how long did we spend on that? About 3 days.
Just about.
I mean, that is basically going to be our magnum opus one day. But I love that nobody knows what we're talking about because we never released that game.
Nathan, you can check it out on the screen.
Maybe when it's on an itch page of its own, I will link it. Footage might get us demonetized. I mean, we're not even monetized. What am I saying? Yeah, it's an interesting game. Definitely. It's funny. I'm the actual total opposite. I love short game jams. I feel like ones that go for too long, I lose momentum. And I think I also get caught up too much on polish if it goes longer than 3 days. 3 days helps me stay in scope. It helps me stay motivated. And after 3 days, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to open a project for like 2 weeks. I'm having a break. But those 3 days of just pure intensity and raw focus, like I ain't doing nothing else. Like I'm eating and I'm working on my game. Like that's all I do for those 3 days. And it is like a drug. It's so good. But doing it, like I've done longer game jams and I either lose momentum, I either scope up too much where I shouldn't, or I start focusing on things that aren't as important, or I just simply get unmotivated. Like after 3 days, I think I'm kind of just a bit more like, okay, this either needs to be more of a long-term thing that I can set goals and figure out what I want to do each day, because yeah, that 3-day restriction I think for me is actually really satisfying. And I also prefer them in person as well. I feel like online ones can be fun, but especially when you don't have your actual friends that you can make the game with, it isn't as enjoyable. Usually with randoms, depending on how well you find a team. But like in person, sleeping on the ground, you know, waking up at 3 a.m. and seeing a friend across, the room that's still working with bags under his eyes and Red Bulls everywhere. And you're just like, bro, go to sleep. Like, I'll be up in 3 hours and you can take a break. And that's just really fun. Like, I know crunch culture is a thing that's looked down upon, and I agree in terms of like full-time work. But when you love something so much, like game jams are just like jam sessions for musicians, I feel like that's the same vibe. Obviously, we can't make a game in an hour or two like some musicians can, but game jams are like our music jam comparison. So
It's
I
fun.
love it. I love it.
It's fun crunch culture.
Yeah, it's fun crunch. And look, it's a young man's game. I've talked to older devs who are like, I ain't doing that anymore. And personally, I can also feel myself slowly less and less be inclined to do that because of age. Like I sleep properly and I wake up somehow sore because my 30s are reaching up to me. Um, like, yeah, I know there's definitely a limit for some people, but for me personally, it's like I love, and maybe it's come from a bit of like romanticizing what game development is. Like growing up, there wasn't many devlogs out there. People weren't doing that as often because, when I was watching YouTube back in the day, it was Fraps and that was it. And Fraps was a lot of money. And there was no OBS. OBS didn't exist. You couldn't just screen record stuff and people weren't streaming or whatever. And so what I watched with game development was documentaries. And there were actually some like indie documentaries people were making of game jams. And so I would see this and be like, wow, this is amazing. They're making a game in like 2-3 days. That's incredible. And so I think that's also just been internalized into me of like, this is what it means to be and make games. Like it's really cool.
I think you and I both have, we had like a very similar moment when we were younger watching the Minecraft documentary of Notch like live coding while the game was running and just being like, this is what game development is? Like, that's
That
absolutely
was the
wild.
moment I changed because before then I wanted to direct Star Wars. That's what I wanted to do. That was what I was working towards. I was filming videos, and so that skill is still being pivoted over to YouTube. But when I saw Notch at his computer change an arrow into an explosive arrow with debugging tools in Java, I was like, this is it. This is my calling. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm sorry, but I have to do this. And then it's taken me this long to figure out really just what that means. Because I think as kids we're like, oh, that's so cool. But yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where I was just like, yeah. So I took the handle from you, Blake. But yeah, that moment I think is just one of the most chorus memories I'll ever have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it was magical.
I'm the exactly the same. I think you and I like we both figured that out within like 2 days of meeting each other that we'd both watched that documentary, and it was that one moment that just like flicked something in our brains that just like that's what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
And I I also had that again like many years later with Indie Game the movie, and I guess I kind of watched that and thought that if I make a game and get it on a console, I'm going to, become a multimillionaire like basically everyone in that documentary. But I think somehow I like glossed over all the like, borderline mental breakdowns that happened throughout the making of those games that are very prominently featured in that documentary. But somehow I was just like, yeah, that's just what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's also sad because I feel like we're just a little bit too late to the party. If we were like 5, maybe 8 years older, we would already be there. We would have been there for the mobile bubble. We would have done there for the console stuff. It would have been great. We would have been like rich and whatever. But unfortunately, we were too young. And yeah, like I didn't.
Yep.
Back then, I still had like an iPod Touch and a really old PC. Like it was still running Windows XP. And then we got an iMac, which isn't good for gaming or making games, honestly. I mean, people are going to be like, oh, Apple's actually good for making games because of Xcode and this and that. I'm like, I'm sorry, no. Windows is the way to go. And, like, to be realistic. Yeah. Andrew, when did you fall in love with making games? I know you're more of a 3D artist, but...
I mean, I was like, I've always been an artist. So I mean, I wouldn't say like my art's like amazing or anything, but you know, I've always been creative. But I did game design in uni, and they had a class game like this almost game design class. It was I had game design. I didn't really click with it, and I had game development, and that was in Unity. So that was like the first I before I did Unreal, I was actually Unity. That's the backstory, but I actually really enjoyed it. I remember making it was just a it's just a cube, and the guy was like, "All right, yeah, time speed and make it move. Press D," and I was like, I typed it in, and I was like, "I did that!" And I went to my brother. I was like, "Holy shit! Look, I did this!" And then he's like, he does programming and stuff, and he's done stuff, but he was also like, "That's pretty cool." It made a little jump and stuff, and I was like, oh, "Holy shit! All I have to do is put a sprite on top of this, and it's a game." And I did. I made my own sprites. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed like putting a bit of like history into the world, and like so decorating it and stuff. So like the game development, I that like was kind of when it clicked, and then every like game dev course since that, I was like putting extra effort in because I wanted to, not because I was trying to get a good grade, but because it was fun. And yeah, it's just like snowboard until now. I still enjoy, even though I don't really do much dev much. Every now and then I'll do a bit of like solo indie stuff, or I dove back into doing a little bit of programming, and started learning how to use like particles and stuff, and that was really fun. Yeah, that like process of like creating something out of nothing is very satisfying to me. Like and making it like look good, and reflect sort of like what I want, and like I should be able to put it down. Yeah.
You know, I think we're all creative people, and that's I think why we all love making games because I feel like it's probably the most creative medium. Like it encompasses everything that different personalities can kind of enjoy into its own interactive thing. So yeah, no, I think that's all why we love making games. I want to go off to a different topic and tangent, just you know, partly because I think it's by the time this video comes out, it's going to be old news. But I still think it's important that we address it and kind of give our thoughts and opinions on it. And that is on stop killing games.
Right.
What are like we're just going to assume that people who are listening and watching know what it is. If you don't, there are a bajillion other videos that commentate on the actual going ons. I want to get your two opinions though on like what your stance is. Even if you don't have one, let's just give you one right now. Now is your time to have an opinion on it, basically.
You know, yeah, I think Stop Killing Games is great. I think it's very cool. Um, but truthfully, if I'm being very honest, my main focus on all this is the funny lol-cow drama between Fire Software. I love watching his thoughts and opinions on it because I think it's just very funny. The way he just won't back down, and the truth is like, I think he actually has some point, but the way he goes about it is very negative. He won't admit he won't admit that he's any wrong. He won't admit that like that his logic has some kind of fault to it. But like I've listened to him as much as I have some beef with. I've got some my own personal beef with Price Software,
With
like
private
I
software
mentioned.
already, yeah, with the game jam stuff,
The
yeah.
game jam, I've had some history with, you know, not very liking him, and then you know all this stuff started coming out. I was like, oh, maybe my dislike of this guy is kind of valid. So I really enjoy watching this content. It's
You
very.
were a hater before it was cool, yeah.
I was a hater way before it was cool, but like, you know, the few things he mentions is that like there's I'm seeing a point from him where he's like the documents or whatever, that there's just like you just it's not predictable enough, and especially if you're going to government, I'm not really too sure about what's going on there, but you know, government in games, it's a bit messy. It can be kind of bad, and you know, I think I think he got this kind of wrong, but it will affect every game. Unfortunately, like as good as this movement is, it will affect. I play a lot of live service games. I Deep Rock Galactic, Helldivers, um, League of Legends, Fortnite. I've been a very live service type of person, and a lot of these games, I'm scared that it goes down and eventually just won't be played again because I love these games. But the whole point of this movement is to provide a plan, like for these companies to provide a plan for these. It's not necessarily, hey, this game now has to run single player. You have to completely retool the entire game. It's to sort of give a possibility of return, possibility of very small support to a game that is no longer playable, and it's just not that hard for these companies. And he's blowing it out of proportion. He won't admit it's wrong, and it's very funny. I'm keeping up with it. The drama is now blowing into towards his Hardbound game, but at least it's good that I think we've hit the million signatures now, right?
Yeah, they've made the goal now.
Yeah.
They've reached it. It's interesting. You did a few points there that I kind of want to extend on. Like me personally, I hate whenever the government gets involved in things because they never make it better. Everything they touch just becomes worse. That's just the reality of things. There are very few examples of like governments doing good. However, I do think it's also important, since governments exist, that they should be able to govern certain things. Unfortunately, people who are in government usually aren't very qualified or competent in doing that. But I think the reason why it's been such a big thing is because of the way that AAAs have been treating their consumers. When you have games like The Crew from Ubisoft or Anthem from EA, which are basically just shovelware now, like there's still bargain bins full of those games. People can actually buy and spend money and put it in. It's just a plastic disc now. It doesn't work. So I think that regard's a problem. It's funny, I was also thinking about when you're talking about live service games and being able to like play things once the service is dead. Um, I've been playing through a lot of the Valve games recently. I've been going through listening to the developer commentaries, which has been really good. It started off with the Half-Life 2. They did like a new update that added commentary for the original game. And so I went through and played that and then did the 2 episodes. And they've actually gone on to play Left 4 Dead 2, which also has director commentary. And it's interesting because I'm thinking about their games and I'm like, hang on, even their live service games like Dota, because I was like, what happens if like the server shut down and Dota's gone forever? Now, if Steam shuts down, that's a different thing entirely, because that's going to be a very big deal, and whenever that day comes, society's just going to collapse. Like that's what's going to happen. But for example, if the Dota service for some reason shut down, but you can still access the executable, they still have things like private matchmaking. You still do things through LAN. You can do bot matches, that sort of thing. And I think that's what most players are asking for. They're asking for, okay, if this game's service is going to end, I want us to be able to enjoy it. Like I know a friend who he loved Anthem. He loved flying around. And the fact that the game stopped getting support, he was actually heartbroken because he's like, I can't just enjoy this mechanic anymore. With the Crew now, you just can't launch the game. It just boop, they can't connect to a server, so you can't play it. And what players want really is that because we are exchanging our money, monetary value, for another good, we want that good to still exist after we've paid for it. Like many other things in the world, whether it's, buying groceries or buying, other electronic equipment, hardware, going, buying a car, once you pay for it, you kind of expect to own it. But I think we're in this stage right now, especially with games and like digital media, with films, the governments actually can't keep up and figure out legality of things. There's this one ex-Valve developer I listen to on TikTok a lot, Chet. He's actually got some really good insights, and he explained a lot about the legalities of like why we have EOLA agreements and why they kind of say that you don't own the thing, it's more of a license. And basically it's to cover the developer's backside so that they don't legally get sued because of the way that just software works. And he also mentioned that when they kind of put that into law, the way that they so vaguely kind of explained what is a game, because they're like it. For example, one of the things that kind of changed the legality around games is that they don't necessarily degrade in value. It's not like a car where it wears down, or a toaster that over time will, deplete in its because it's software. Sure, you can argue that, oh, it's not as good as the newer stuff, but like the ones and zeros never really change for the game. So the value never really changes for the game because it's the same as it was on release more often than not. And so the terms and the way in which governments and legalities have deemed software and things that don't really change in value over time, has made it then harder for developers and publishers and people who publish games to properly create legal agreements, because if a lawyer or judge looks at, what the law says here about what is games, then that can be misinterpreted into a lot of things. And so I know a lot of the legal stuff is actually just to make sure that people are covered legally. But I think the biggest issue, and the reason why everyone hasn't, is just supporting Stop Killing Games, is because people are paying for stuff, and then that stuff's been taken away from them. And I think the frustration that we are getting, well, we are seeing at least, is that these big companies are saying, "Oh, it's not possible. We can't do that. It's unreasonable." But it's been done for decades. For decades. There's a TikTok I saw from these guys I watch, Loftier. I love them, but the game isn't even out yet. But it's a cozy MMO game. That's what's going to come out when eventually it's released, and they've already got a end of life plan. So a few of the devs that are working on their team have worked on live service games before, and all of those teams that they were on previously, when the games went bust or whatever, they created tools for the community to run their own servers. It's not that hard to do. Like, if you can make a video game, okay, that's hard to do. Making a video game that people love and enjoy, that's hard to do. If you can do that, I am sure it is possible for you to then make an end-of-life service. Even if a game that's a live service and the company goes busts and there's no more money going around, the devs who worked on that game and put all the passion into it, through their own means, if they were legally allowed to do it, would create an end-of-life service plan for them. Like, it's just as simple as that. It's more of a shame the fact that like this movement has happened, because the companies that are doing it are still doing it, and they're getting worse at it. And so the only reason really why people are going to the EU and the governments is because the big corporations aren't being ethical about it. And so what do you do when someone isn't being ethical? You try to write it into law, so now it's legal. That's kind of my rant about it all. And the pirate software stuff has been so interesting to me.
He's so funny.
I think
man.
every content creator, YouTuber, especially once you reach a certain threshold when you're making money off stuff, you need a PR manager. That like you need people, you need a legal team. You need someone like, luckily timing is perfect here. Did you guys see the CEO and HR that got caught at the Coldplay concert?
Yep.
No, what's this about?
Angie doesn't know? Okay.
So everywhere.
There's this Coldplay concert that happened a few days ago in the States. And they have a kiss cam, which is like a camera that like zooms up onto the audience of people doing stuff.
Okay, yep.
And they zoomed up on this massive CEO coddling his HR, like head of HR. They're both married to separate people. And once the camera went on them, like it was like a Titanic pose where he was like holding her from behind.
And he hides.
And they were like smiling and listening to music, and they see themselves on camera, and they just both duck and weave.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, like it was insane. But you know what the CEO came out and said? I can't believe that a private moment in a secluded place was made public. Hey everyone, this is our future Nathan editor here. Just wanted to clarify something. This is actually a fake post that I saw, but luckily caught it later after we filmed. So I just thought I'd let you all know it's not real, and to be careful out there because this happens a lot. And it's same with private software. Like if you got things wrong, own up to it. Say that you were wrong. I think so much of his issues could have been resolved if he just had a little bit more humility. If he was like, you know what? I do see myself talking about working at Blizzard too much. or I do see myself, being a bit narcissistic in certain areas, but you got to understand I'm just trying to defend myself because of my personality and the YouTube, like the internet's so loud sometimes you need to just have a wall. Like if he just became more real with it, I think it would be so much less worse than it actually is. But because he just digs in and holds his ground in a way when everyone can kind of see, man, bro, you need to concede here. It just hasn't. People like humility, I think, and it's really important to have that. It's hard to do in a community space like YouTube, and as people who are now posting on YouTube, who knows? Maybe in the future we're gonna have issues with stuff like that, where it's like personalities happen and opinions happen, um, and it's really hard to navigate that. But I think there needs to be an element of apology and humility from people. Otherwise, you're just going to get farmed for clicks, which is what's happening to him now.
It's
Um,
almost like dev ego, right? Because
mm,
it's something that plagues game industry. Um, uh, yeah, just everywhere, really. As soon as you believe you have the higher ground, it's hard. It's hard for someone to draw in their head that everyone has opinions, everyone has ideas, and well, I think one of the main things is the fact that he refuses to have a conversation about it.
mm,
I've been looking a lot into the drama. I've been watching all this drama slop where it's talking about his past and everything. And he has this tendency to believe he is right, and he doesn't want to hear the other side.
mm.
Um, what's his name? The Stop Killing Games guy. What's his
Yep.
name?
I don't know his name, but I know of him. Yeah.
He's got the beard.
Yeah.
He wanted a discussion with Pi Software, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to hear it. Oh, no, it's trash." And then the whole OnlyFans thing, where with WoW, where they're like, "Hey, dude, everyone made mistakes. Just own up to the fact you made a mistake." And he's like, "No, I did the right thing. See you later." And he leaves the Discord call. It's pathetic, and I know, especially even in dev, it's not just him. Once you have sort of a history of, or you have an idea, it's hard for someone to try and hear someone out, right?
Mm.
Someone always believes they're right. It makes things hard for everyone at the end of the day.
I think, like you were saying, I totally agree with the ego thing. There's something that I'm interested in seeing as I develop as a developer and work in teams and stuff. Is I think it is important to hold on to your opinions of things, but I think the hardest part is actually convincing others of that opinion and having the evidence for it.
Exactly.
I think it's fine to say, I know you're wrong, but then actually lift the reasons why you think that. And then if you feel yourself being convinced, then you have to kind of say, oh, okay, I agree with that. Yeah, I was wrong. Or showing, lowering that ego a little bit. And it's just crazy, like that WoW thing of the fact that he got so mad. He's like, whoever did that, I'm going to ban them. And then you go back and see that he was the one that did it. And then he's like, actually, that was great. It's like you're just flip-flopping between two things of what the decision was. Like, you're not being consistent in what truth is. Like, is it bad to do that thing or is it good to do it? Like, you need to make a choice in that. And so what he should have done was whoever's doing that, I'm banning them. And then realizing that he did it, he goes, oh, okay, I messed up. And that's would have been resolved. Like, that would have been fine. But yeah, I think... and I've just seen recently his streams. He's just not giving. He's not getting it any better. Like he's just giving them.
He's got a ban list.
Ammunition.
He's got a ban counter.
People, it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's sad though. It is sad, because he could have learned from this, but instead, I think he's just gonna drop off. Honestly,
yeah. I have
Didn't
a story.
He get swatted?
Oh. Did he get swatted?
I believe. I think I saw on YouTube that he's been swatted twice. Recently. Yeah, it's gotten pretty hectic.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that any sort of bad threats or swatting is good. I think you should let people just have reality hit them in the face when they see their paycheck decrease, or because of the view counts and banning people, or seeing how other things in life will change. You don't need to make their life any harder.
Just
That's
don't swat
crazy.
people, man. It is the wrong thing to do, no
It
matter
is the wrong
what they've
thing.
done. Whatever what they've done. But
Yeah,
I've got a. Oh, no, go ahead.
I think there's been a lot of like death threats as well. Like, I guess it's the internet. That sort of stuff happens pretty regularly, I guess. Like, but it's just uh, maybe a little bit of an overreaction.
Hmm.
To go that far with it. Like, you can disagree with them all you want, but swatting and death threats is probably going a little bit far, considering what we're dealing with here.
Honestly, just
Yeah.
don't harass him either, right? He's wrong. You can voice your opinions about it, but do not go harass him. Don't send death threats. Don't spam his email. You're wrong. Or I mean, it's kind of funny when he's got the cockroach spam, but at the end of the day, it's just you have your fun with it, but just have a sense of reality. Don't go too far.
And honestly, you could put more energy into other more fulfilling things. Because guess what? Even if you give a massive long email of here are the reasons why you're wrong and you should correct yourself, he probably isn't going to even read it or listen to it. So instead of writing an email about him doing that, go make your own game. Go write that book you've always wanted to write. Like there's so many more productive things you could do with your life. Like I keep in a tab on the news, but like after 5 minutes of catching up with things, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go off and be productive because like I've got things to do in my life. And I feel like if people went and did that, it'd actually be better for them as well. But also I can say as a creator, like you will just get the most absurd comments and hate towards you. Like I remember at my old job when we started a new channel and we started getting hate comments, my boss said, "We've made it, guys. As soon as you get hate comments, it means you're out of the algorithms. You're not like just getting sent to people that like you. Now you're getting sent to everyone. Now you're getting bigger, and this is when you start playing with the big boys. So like, it's also just reality of being a creator online. Unfortunately, is when you have all these people. I I've just gotten some. I did a Linux video the other week, and I will get some of the most absurd comments talking about how I am as a person because I choose Ubuntu for my first flavor of OS, and Arch Linux is king. And what do you mean you cut like all this other stuff? And they're like, then they'll just say random things. Like people on the internet, I partly believe in the dead internet theory of the fact that like just no one's engaging in comment sections anymore. It's just brain dead people half the time. Sometimes you get really good comments, and I will admit that's really good. Like it's uplifting and gives me hope. But other comments, wow. Wow, people, I'm like, why did you post that? Like sometimes you read a comment and you'll go, that went absolutely nowhere. Like all of your input there meant nothing. Like they'll just tell me about how they had turned on the computer and it switched on, but put it in 3 paragraphs. And you'd be like, okay, that was just wasting time. So like that's also the thing with the internet. It's just that people are dumb and stupid. And so hopefully he's
Yeah.
dealing with it well because that's just part of the job, unfortunately. Being a creator online is having to deal with idiots.
Certainly is.
Like,
Like, I used to get, I've gotten, my fair share of nasty comments, and it used to get to me like pretty bad. But since I've sort of met, a lot of other game developers, it's made it a lot easier because I usually just like screenshot them and send them to Andrew and be like, look at what this guy's like
It's funny,
saying
though.
about my free game. Like, it's just become a joke now, sort of. So,
I think that's an important thing to do, right? Is to have those friends and creators. Like I know with you guys when we go to IGDAM or when we meet up, and you're like, "Oh, how you going, Nathan?" I will not think about how my week or day is gone. I'll think about that one comment I had on YouTube or that one Discord message I got, and be like, "Guys, listen to this." And it's cathartic and it's a way to deal with it. So if anyone is dealing with that sort of stuff, like definitely just like laugh it off, because honestly, most of the time those people are wrong and they're not going to go anywhere with that comment where you are because you've made something that they feel strongly about. And that's basically art, isn't it? Art is creating things that give an emotional response. And so you've made something now that people have responded to.
yeah.
And to
Like,
loop
you
back
go ahead.
around to pirate software, just ignore it. Like we've all ignored it. We've all got our hate comments. Just ignore it. They won't come back.
As I've gotten older, I've become definitely more, what's the word? Forthright, controversial, strongly opinionated. I wasn't always like this, but you know, times on YouTube do stuff to you. And as I've like learned and experienced things as well. Parrot Software, I look at some of his stuff, people like call it as code and that, and I'm like, man, look at his game. Like, I'm sorry, but like that quality of game is going to make that quality of code. Like that's just how it is. His game was never groundbreaking or incredible. Like no one ever, everyone saw his shorts and him like telling stories about him working at Blizzard, and that gauged the interest. His game never really did. You know, I know people like to call it an Undertale kind of parody or whatever, but like, it doesn't reach that same level, I don't think. And so it's funny when we look, especially with creators, at their authority in what they speak about. Because one person that recently has really been grinding my gears is Thomas Brush. And I don't want to start any beef, because if he ever invited me onto his podcast, I would honestly go and talk about my games and the industry. But I know people go to him for advice in games. He's, I think, one of the most well-known YouTube game dev creators. Like he's the most consistent. He's been doing it for probably one of the longest. You know, Brackies and Danny and stuff, they've all retired and stuff now. So he's the one that's always doing it consistently and for such a long time now, where he does have an ability to say things from an authoritative source because he has published games, he has worked in a team, he's gotten funding for stuff. But sometimes he says things that I'm just like, that is so inaccurate and incorrect, and I don't want to do like some hate video correcting him that he's wrong, but I want to get your guys' opinion on like, and it's funny because it's the irony of me saying this as a guy sitting in his office with a camera and a microphone being like, I am correct and trust me, bro. But he's said a few things recently. When you overscope is when you add or introduce new mechanics that are addition to what you already had. Overscoping is when you have a racing game that also has a weather system and also has a you know, engine system and tire, like all that stuff. But a racing game itself, scoped down, is just a car racing around a track. And he was saying, you know, my game's overscoping so much because I'm adding juice, basically. And so that thing, I was like, he's misinterpreting what things are. And the other one, sorry guys, you can tell me to stop if you think this is not good, but the other thing that got me, and I had to stop the video several times, just going, oh my gosh, really? Bro, are you serious? Okay, so he did this interview with the Ready or Not dev.
Like I had, let's say, 300 lights in one scene, and I disabled all the lights and I looked at my stats. The frame rate was not impacted at all.
Yeah.
It was so weird. I learned bake lighting for 4 or 5 months. I learned how to do all of it.
Oof.
And it's a pain in the butt to learn.
It sucks.
Yeah, I learned it all. And then I realized, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need to bake lights. The problem was shadows. It was always shadows.
Now, guys, can you tell me what's wrong with saying that?
Is that not the same thing?
Exactly! It's the same thing!
I'm not even really a dev.
But it generates shadows! Now, what he was actually going on about was the fact that some of his lights... Okay, no, sorry. So he was using a light mapper, which is all baked lights. But then he realized that the light mapper, that wasn't good. So instead of, you know, baking the lighting, he decided to turn off baked lighting and do it all in real time. So they're all real-time shadows. Gentlemen, I can get from your reaction why that's not a good idea. And what annoyed me the most, right, was the fact that he said he spent ages studying light mapping and getting lights working and understanding it in Unity. Bro, if you read the core documentation, it basically says, don't put more than 2 spotlights near each other, otherwise you're going to have issues. Like, the documentation, like, I remember this from years ago, because I wanted to make a hallway scene and have all these, like, art gallery things. That's why I have things like baked lighting, and we've also got the volume, I forgot what they're called in Unity, but basically they capture light and shadow in a spherical volume, so when you... Do you know what's called again? It's like a volume probe. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say probes, yeah.
Yeah. Another way to deal with lighting, that's when it's baked, but you want things dynamically to be shaded, that's what you use. Now, there's been a few examples of that where I'm just a little bit concerned about him giving advice on game dev when he doesn't clearly understand very simple concepts of, like, he was saying he was getting issues on the Steam Deck and people were having bad performance issues on this game. And the fact that he was like, it was the lighting, but then he just completely misunderstands what lighting even is.
Are we
Like,
still on Thomas Rush?
yes, this is
Okay,
still the
okay.
same guy. Yeah, it really concerns me that people look to him for advice. I think he's good in terms of like running a business and having that insight, although the things have changed a lot since he started, and I think he's realized that now that you can't just get a publisher to fund your game now. You can't do that like how you could in the early 2010s. But I'm also just concerned with whenever he may give advice on things technically, actually worries me that he's going to be just like giving out false information on stuff like engines. And he basically was saying he looks at Unreal and goes, "Oh, that's such a better engine." But for me personally, I think what's more important is understanding how your tool works. Because the person that he was interviewing was like, "Yeah, you could use a different engine that would like solve that problem with the lighting." And he's like, "Oh, what engine's that?" And he's like, "Well, just build your own." To which Thomas was like, "Oh, how would you go about doing that?" And I'm like, "Thomas, buddy, you've been a game dev for how many years? Like, you haven't even tried to make your own engine?" Look, I'm being too harsh here. I understand. I'm getting worked up on it. But I have tried to make my own engine, and I probably will make my own engine in the future. That's something I love doing. But I just think there's this thing that scares me the most with game devs right now is that we aren't becoming masters of our tools. We're doing too much of a just see how it works and put all the assets in the scene and worry about performance in the end. But even then, we completely misinterpret what performance is. And I've especially felt that in Unreal. Some of the tutorials I watch now, I'm like, wow, these should be taken down for like the absolute worst tutorials I've ever seen. They're just like terrible ways. Like, you should not put things in tick, especially for making a full game. If you're going to have more than 5 things in tick, and Andrew, you know this as well, like it's like
the Yandere dev.
Hmm?
It's like the Yandere dev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for Unity, it's just like the update function. So calling an update, that's the tick. And people will just do like 10 bajillion things in the tick because that's what you need. And it's like, you should not do that. There's other ways of it just scares me. Because obviously when you full tutorials, that like that person's in that one scene by itself. But when you have devs who have full projects watching tutorials online, I'm so worried. I'm worried for our future because people complain right now that Unreal is unoptimized and has poor performance, but we are not teaching it any better. And I think it's the same with Unity and every other game engine. Like people say, like we talked about this before, like Godot is so much better than all of them. It's like, well, no, we've played games that were 3D Godot engines, and because the dev didn't even know what occlusion culling was with graphics, they were making terrible 3D games because they didn't understand what was happening behind the scenes or in the engine. I don't know. That's just something I've wanted to get off my chest for a while because we need to be more diligent in learning our tools. It's like a woodsman or like a carpenter, not learning the craft of how to make a good chair, but rather just getting a hammer and a nail, banging things together, hoping eventually a chair is made. Like, we need to understand why things are happening and like read documentation and properly understand what light mapping is and lights, and even just trying to understand more. Like for me, maybe it's different because of the way that I work and think, but I love to dip my toes into every element. So like I'll come to Andrew when I need professional help with rigging or 3D modeling or whatever, or Blake when it comes to design things, because I honestly think Blake is a smarter designer than me. But I also try to take up as much information as I can in terms of, lighting artists, programming, texture, painting, like just the list goes on and on and on, all the different things, knowing how to UV unwrap stuff. There's so much stuff to learn, but I always try to make sure that I have a fundamental understanding of why things are and how they work so that I can make good games. Thank you for letting me rant.
So
That feels so much better.
No, I get it. I hate it when people auto unwrap, like, why are you doing that? It's not.
I do that sometimes.
You shouldn't do that. I mean, unless it doesn't matter, like it really doesn't matter, but it does make things harder in the long term. So some people don't understand that they'll auto unwrap everything, and it's like, hey, can I borrow your model? I need to use it, and I'm like, I cannot use this. Half the car is on this side, and then the other half of the car is over here, and it's like, I can't use this.
Yeah, no, I part of this passion of mine's come from my most recent semester in computer science and just understanding how like computers work in general. Um, but like it's just because once you understand, it's like your third eye is open and you finally can comprehend like what it means. Like I not only do I know what an array is in like C sharp, I know how it looks in machine code, like in RAM. And that helps me to then understand issues with memory leaks and all that sort of stuff. Um, and like I just think it's really important that people understand how they like. I'm at the point now where I'm not even like, oh, build your own engine or whatever else. I'm like, you know what? Unity is great for some people. Unreal's great, like whatever. Pick your tool set, but then become a master at that. Understand its limitations. Like I remember when I was really big into Unity, I wanted to make some really good WebGL games. But you know what I did first before making any of those WebGL games? I looked at limitations. I realized things like real-time lighting just wasn't an option. Certain materials just can't be used, like certain translucency stuff or reflections can't be used. And so because of that, I decided against using WebGL because my games, I wanted baked and real-time shadows for things. I wanted to have reflections of stuff. And so a lot of this information, I think what annoys me is that it's there in the documentation. It's there if you watch from the correct sources. Going to where these things are being built and asking in Discord servers or reading on the websites is really good. As soon as we go into the YouTube space, there's some people where I'm just like, whoa, blacklist them because they're just telling you stuff that's gonna like you're gonna have to redo it or it's gonna be an issue and you just think it's fine for ages. Like whether it's auto UV unwrapping or knowing how to probably weight paint or even understanding like texel density, or like just in programming, understanding what happens within a frame. Like once you understand how to profile, use the profiler or debug how like a frame is rendered in your game, the performance things that you can do is like it just helps you so much. So this is my news out to everyone that's making games. Like just get to know your stuff. And when you do something, if you don't fully understand it, try and understand it. And look, sometimes things will break and things are limitations, and that's just what tools are. But then we need to understand why and ways that we can work around it. Because, it's I just think it's so important. And I could just ramble about it forever and ever and ever and ever because, I just want us to make good games. And part of making good games is making performant games. And yeah, yeah.
Can I
That's
play
it.
devil's
I've
advocate?
said what I've. Yes, go ahead, please.
All right. So obviously you're studying a lot of this stuff, and I guess like the technical side of it is something that has become very important to you, and making sure it's done properly.
Mm.
I feel like I have a slightly different view on it, and that's that a lot of
to rebut it, so please take your piece, but then I will rebut
All right,
with
all
agreeing
right.
with you.
Let's go for it.
Yep.
I sort of think that a lot of these things, when you're trying to ship a game, can go out the window in a lot of ways, like making sure your code is like, very cleanly written and things like that. I feel like if you go into a lot of these, quite popular release games, I know like David Zemansky's talked about this quite a lot. He's a guy that made Iron Lung and Dusk and a bunch of other things, and I just feel like people can get really caught up on making things technically perfect when they don't need to be. Obviously, there are things you really want to focus on, like performance is something that is quite important. And like a lot of my games don't even use lighting anymore. Like I'll just like use some fog, use some ambient light color, and fake a couple of shadows with like a transparent sprite or something like that. But I feel like a lot of these people online that you see, complaining about people's code, these people have never shipped a game, and it's always, obviously this is not like I'm not pointing fingers at you or anything like that. Obviously,
Please
you know.
do. Yeah. Be like, Nathan, I can take it. I can take it.
No, like I've seen you've made games. I've seen the game that you're making. You're doing a very good job of it, and all of that. You know, I just don't want to like sit here and have people sort of see it as a barrier to making something. Like making a game is just such a big task, and there is just so much to do, especially like when you're solo or in a small team. That you don't want to get too bogged down on certain things. Like there are things that are very important, but you don't need to have everything be perfect to make a good game.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I agree with
Andrew, you
Blake.
say your piece.
Yeah, I agree with Blake. There's a certain sense of appropriate, like or proper procedure that a lot of things you need. But there's a certain point where, as long as you understand and it works the same way without any huge downside, like don't think so need to be perfect. However, like as someone who, if you decide to make some games, you should try and understand, at least try and understand why certain things work, why certain things are needed for that, and why it works this way, and why this is a better way or not. Because at the end of the day, especially as someone who works in group settings a lot, if you get put into a group setting and like your certain way, the appropriate way is typically, because everyone has their own typical way, the appropriate way is what most people will go by, and it makes things harder. However, like, especially, there's a lot of criticism towards Pirate Software's code right now for Heartbound, but, at the end of the day, I think he's the only programmer, or there's only a few, and if he understands it and it works, then it just is what it is, right? There's no need for like perfect or proper procedure.
Yeah, and I think
I agree with you guys.
I think Undertale's the same. Like a lot of people have talked about how bad the Undertale code is. It's like, yes, but it's also Undertale. Like, is there a more beloved game than like indie game than Undertale? Like, I just don't think, as long as it works, does it really matter?
I don't think it doesn't matter, but I think, especially if you're not doing it properly, going back to fixing things, going back to revise, or someone going into it to like port it, it needs, or the proper way is always going to be the best way to fix any of those. However, at the end of the day, the game works, it's beloved, it was not designed, it was not thought in mind to be put on everything else, and it was really thought in mind to work the way he wanted it to work. And then yeah, I know there's one of the endings or something where he didn't know how to do it, so he just wrote some fuck ass code, and it was just like, and it just crashed the game, and he was like, oh yeah, it stopped the game, you know what, it worked, and he just left it there. I believe he's probably fixed it now, but
No, I think I've heard about that. Yeah. Look, I agree with you guys. I think what I'm trying to say, at least, right, and Blake, you actually made a perfect example of this, is as a computer scientist, right, a lot of my stuff is, people will say things and be like, this is the correct way to do this. But the way I like to interpret it is through evidence. So, like you've said with the lighting and stuff, I feel like because you've made so many games in Unity and you've mucked around with lighting and all this sort of stuff, you realize the best way to do it is to add fog, add an ambient source of light, and then just any sort of shadow have as a sprite or material or whatever. I think that is what I'm trying to get at with this thing of like, it isn't so much that you need to know or do things the correct way, because I understand maybe you don't understand the correct way of doing things. Maybe there isn't a correct way because you're doing something completely new and different. Maybe you have disagreements in a team that's the correct way. The best way to figure this out, though, is to test it, to do a hypothesis of being like, okay, if I turn off all the lighting in my game, it's still going to look like X or Y, and then proving that with your evidence. I think kind of what my point was more of being that when you have authoritative sources saying that this is the way you should do X, or this was, my experience doing Y, when you kind of, those who've had the same experience kind of go, well, hang on, why? I'm confused now because that doesn't make sense to me. So I kind of need you to show me the evidence as to what you're saying is the reason why it is. Like, tell me why, Thomas Brush, that light maps aren't shadows and the shadows are a separate thing. I understand now what it was. Like, I get that basically he misspoke in saying that it was the real-time shadows that were causing an issue. It wasn't the light maps that were the problem. Like, I understand that. I think the best way to make games is the ways that it's been proven to you, and the ways in which you can, through your own evidence, show that it is a productive way of making games. Like, I don't want people to say that you should never use the update function in C# and Unity, because there are times where you need to use it. Same with the tick in Unreal. There are times where you need to use it. But I want there to be people's personal experience and evidence, and so that if we get in a debate, you can actually tell me the reasons why you're using this. It's when people just put things or check a box without knowing, and they go, okay, it did something that I think it works. I kind of want people to have their own personal experiences of, I know by checking this box in Unity, it's going to make my life easier or harder because it does X or Y. And I think that makes you a better developer because of it. Like, that's really what my point is trying to be, of like, don't just randomly jumble up things. Like, the thing with Toby Fox and Undertale was that, guess what? He was able to make a whole game through if statements. And he can prove it because the game's released and it's a massive hit. And because no one else has to really touch it, it's his own game, his own thing. It's his code, and he can manage it all he wants. I think once you get into bigger productions and bigger teams and that sort of thing, that's when it starts being a bit more computer sciencey programming. But I'm just trying to talk with people who are making games themselves to not so blindly check boxes or listen to people on YouTube. Like, when you watch a tutorial that says to do stuff in a certain function, check it. Ask in a forum. I would say ChatGPT it, but at this point, I'm like, don't even do that, because read documentation is going to be so much better for you. But yeah, that's kind of just my point of, like, when you do stuff in your tools and your engines, like, know why and have evidence that you can argue. Because just imagine that I'm here behind your shoulder being like, why are you doing that? Tell me why. And if you can explain why, then you're more than halfway there. Like, that's all I just want people to know what they're doing.
Yeah, you
No,
don't want to be a Yandere dev. You want to be a Toby Fox.
And I think you just need to experiment with your tools as well. Like, when I first started making games, all my level design was just I wasn't grabbing a cube and flipping all the faces and modeling it that way. I was like, to build a room, I was making a wall with 8 different sides, and I was placing them all together. It's terrible for performance, but I just didn't know the other options were out there for quite a while of how you properly meant to model things. And I think the same is can be said for just ticking a box in Unity. There's so many options, and especially when you're inexperienced or you're doing something you don't have much knowledge on, it is very easy to just accidentally flick something on that shouldn't be on, and it can have quite a detrimental effect at times. But I think you really just need to experiment with your tools and figure out what's going to work properly for your game.
Well said. That's it. We're in agreement, guys. We did it. We world peace in the software world now. We've done it.
We did it.
But yeah, look, that time's up for us. Thank you guys both for joining. Thank you all for listening and watching. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Bye.